You know my story, right?
Hey everybody, welcome to FreeMind Local, presented by the FreeMind Network podcast. Today we have a super interesting guest on the show. Ruby George is our guest. She is here and the co-founder and head of partnerships of the United Grid League, a sport that is exploding right now with its mix of athleticism, strategy, and just real raw intensity. All right, Ruby's been in the game about a little over 8 years now, handling everything from partnerships to operations, basically making sure the entire league runs like a well-oiled machine. We're going to dive deep into the world of sports marketing, how she's building partnerships in such a unique, fast-paced environment, and what it's like to manage high-stakes events while growing an entirely new sport. This is going to be a killer conversation. Let's get into it, but first, we do have our ask. Please like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends about how much fun we're having on here. All right, let's check out Ruby's story.
Ruby George, United Grid League, and 2017.
All right, so 2017 United Grid League, and where are we sitting right now? Like, what is this space that we're in?
We're in the Work Together workspace in downtown Pennsylvania. This is just a co-working space that I happen to know about that's close to my house.
Awesome.
My brother, my business partner, lives in Florida, and most of our matches and event activity is in Florida, so I kind of commute down to Florida.
Well, I had to tell you, it was a small world thing. I signed up for this last night or 2 nights ago. And then a friend of mine from York, who's in the energy business, for whatever reason, he's like, hey, I was getting ready to book this meeting at this new place in Downingtown. I saw your name on the list. Have you ever been there before? And I was like, no, but I'll let you know tomorrow at 10 a.m. So it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I love it here. It's really
so I'll be sending it a high regards for the next booking.
That's good, yeah.
Bringing it in from York for you. So talk to me a little bit about how, specifically, let's go back to right now with Grid League and sports marketing and everything like that you're doing. Let's go farther back into your story in athletics. All right, was athletics always a part of your life, and then how did it play a role in your life if it did?
Yeah, it's interesting. So my brother and I are business partners. We grew up actually in Downingtown. So our parents were always just kind of into fitness in some way. Our mom was a bodybuilder for a little bit in her 40s. Our dad taught spin for a while. So we just kind of were always around fitness in some way. And my brother played sports and I did gymnastics. And then when we got into college, I think we both kind of just realized that fitness was important. And so we started doing things our own way. My brother was running a lot. I'm a dancer, so I was always into dance and things like that. And then he found CrossFit in 2010, maybe. Once he found CrossFit, it was like he really loved it and started drinking the Kool-Aid and doing everything he could to get as fit as he could. And in the meantime, he's a designer, went to school for graphic design, and he was working in a marketing agency and kind of doing his own stuff on the side. So he would, design logos and websites and things like that for clients. Started getting too big for just himself, and so our mom is also a designer, and so he brought her on. Nice. And it just happened where I got hired at his company that he had his regular job at, where he was a graphic designer. I got hired as a project manager at his company. So we were working together, and then our mom actually came to live with me for a little while, and so she started working with him and doing some design work. And then I would hear them kind of argue about, how did I get paid for this job, or did this person get invoiced? No, I haven't invoiced them yet. So I'd be like, I was just like, why don't you let me do the invoicing for this? So we kind of grew this company super organically, and
nice.
He ended up leaving his regular job to be a full-time entrepreneur with our mom as the lead designer. I was the account manager and kind of like operations person, and then he was the CEO. Meanwhile, he had started CrossFit, and he was talking about CrossFit. He became paleo, got me. I was vegetarian at the time, and he was talking to me about the importance of protein and how we used to eat as Paleolithic people. And so I became paleo, felt a lot better, started CrossFit also, and we were working together. And so we're kind of like, our lives were just kind of like intermingling, and we were along the same path. So then one of our clients for the design agency was starting a CrossFit league. And they had this idea of making CrossFit into a team sport with a regular season playoffs and championship type structure. My brother's a huge sports fan, go Birds, And so it really appealed to him, and so we kind of came on to that opportunity as like, okay, this would be something really, really cool for us to do as our design agency. Grew it into, we're just gonna go do this because like this makes a lot of sense for us and what we love. And then after the first season of that league, where we were starting this CrossFit league, we heard about this thing that Tony Budding was starting, who is, you know, the director of media for CrossFit. He was leaving CrossFit LLC to go start his own version of a essentially CrossFit league. And so we were like, well, that makes way more sense. That actually sounds better than our idea, but it had a lot of the same, you know, flavor of what we were trying to do. And so my brother and I said, let's go try to do that. And so we went and applied for a team in that league the year that it launched, and got the Miami team. My brother moved to Fort Lauderdale, and we had the Miami team in that league for the 3 seasons that it existed. During that time, we just fell in love with the sport 100%. We're like, this is like, society needs this, the world needs this is amazing. It uses our abilities and our strengths so well. Like, we're the perfect team for this. So we started our own league that was, you know, kind of on the grassroots level. We wanted to grow it up to be more on that national, you know, stage again. And that's how that was the origin story of the United Grid League.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Check that. That is really cool.
Wasn't quite the answer to your question.
No. I'll get there. Don't worry. I'm a professional. I'll get there. Don't ever hold back on those any of those stories like that, because I'll get it all later in post production, and I'll come back. If you ever go off question, I'll come back to it.
Got it.
So you had the league. You joined the league as a participant, and now you have your own league.
Yes.
All right. What is the moment? Let's go real deep into that moment. You and your brother, is your mom part of this when the transition's happening too?
No, so our mom worked with us on the design agency for, I think it was something like 7 or 8 years. And right when we were starting the original CrossFit League, her mom got sick and needed help. And so she actually moved back to Indiana. It was kind of all perfect timing to where she couldn't work on the design agency anymore. And we were like, we're kind of over that whole thing. We have this other idea that we really like. So she's always been super, super supportive. She has helped us out in a lot of ways with the Miami Surge and with the Florida Grid League, which is now the United Grid League. So she's helped us out with a lot with the United Grid League as well, but she's retired and she kind of helps with childcare for me at this point. That's how she's involved.
That's a valuable contribution.
Huge contribution.
A business owner and parent to another, yes, that's a valuable contribution.
Yeah.
She might as well be an equity owner at that point.
Absolutely. My husband too.
Yeah, exactly. My parents are very much involved in that part.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that moment. You're and your brother, you're going from being participants in a league to now you're like, you know, we're going to do this. And now I've had my own business since 2008, so I can.
2008 was when we started our design agency.
Awesome. Well, there you go. So one to another, you know, it takes that moment of courage to really, and crazy. It's that blend of courage and crazy. You're both sitting there. Let me fast forward for a second. How many locations, like where does the United Grid League participate showcase and participate and compete?
Yeah, so we started in Florida, and it was the Florida Grid League. And then 2017 was our first season. We had 6 teams, and it was really just a proof of concept. We wanted to show that if teams had matches where all of their friends and family could drive to watch them, so much like, you know, a team sport where you're rooting for your local team, that's what we wanted to show was, you know, the proof of concept was that was going to work from a grassroots level. And so we had 6 teams in the 2017 season. In 2018, we grew to 8 teams, and they were all in Florida. And we stayed at 8 teams for a long time because it worked out really well with each team played 4 times in the regular season. It just kind of like all made sense from a logistics standpoint, from a manageable standpoint. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, there's 140 players, there's 8 teams with multiple team owners and head coaches, and so it was a lot of things to work out, a lot of moving parts. When we started, the idea originally was we were going to prove out the Florida Grid League as a regional league model, and then we'd replicate that in other areas of the country. So we started actually down that path. I think it was like 2019 where we started one close to where we live in Philadelphia. And then we were starting one in Atlanta as well. So we had people that were interested in starting these other leagues, and we were like, okay, this is our business model. We're now going to replicate this idea in other areas. So we had 2 other leagues that were kind of on the way, and then COVID happened. So Florida Grid League was able to kind of like keep going because we had a lot more history in there, in that area. And the other 2 leagues just kind of couldn't make it. And so during COVID, when we couldn't have events, we couldn't plan our season, my brother turned his attention to social media. And so took all of the content from the previous 3 years and put it out on social media, figured out the algorithms, and we started to grow on social media. So at that point, we were kind of like, well, now this one's taking off. We went from 5,000 total followers to something like 200,000 total followers in 6 months. And so since that took off, we're like, all right, let's pour gasoline on the Florida Grid League and just focus up on that and see how big we can grow that. So from 2020 to 2023, we were like, Florida Grid League, it's growing. We're at, almost 500,000 followers on Instagram alone. And so that's when we were kind of like, and plus, players were flying in from all over the country. We had an international player. We had several signed, but the only one that could actually play after COVID was in 2023 from Colombia. And so, we were kind of like, all right, we're shifting our idea here to be more of, we're going to grow this league to become the national league again, and that's where we're going to take it, rather than having that, multiple leagues around the country. We're just going to have one big league. So, that's how we kind of came to the conclusion of changing the name from the Florida Grid League, because we really weren't the Florida Grid League anymore. We were the United Grid League that played in Florida. So in 2024, in January 2024, we rebranded to the United Grid League, and we agreed to play for the first time outside of the state of Florida at Mr. Olympia Expo in Las Vegas, which we just wrapped up actually last weekend. So this whole year of 2024 has been kind of, planting the seeds for expansion. One of our teams already has rebranded to the Atlanta Wild. So we have 7 teams inside of Florida, 1 team outside of Florida, and we just announced our 9th team from Texas.
Wow.
So we're planning on adding 1 more team to the roster for next year, so we'll have a total of 10 teams, and that's the first time we've expanded since 2018. Wow. It's a big year.
Yeah, absolutely. And with CrossFit being, like, from a venue standpoint, pretty versatile as far as that goes, what types of, are you doing these at CrossFit gyms, or are you doing them more at event spaces when you do these competitions?
We started out in small gyms. We were super cramped. We think about the first match that we ever held was in this gym.
Put us right there right now. Put us
barely fit the grid. The grid is the size of a
sweat, the smell, everything.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was in Florida, and we were fishing, so it was hot. And our poor equipment crew was building bars in like the closet and having to roll them out. Between every race was like 10 minutes because we needed so much time to get the equipment onto the grid. It was really, really, difficult and cramped, but the energy level was so fun. It was so exciting. So that was really what we grew on, was like just small gyms, small warehouses, anywhere we could fit the size of the grid, which is the size of a basketball court. That's what it was originally intended to be. We've started, it's shrunk a little tiny bit just so that we could fit into gyms. And then since then we've grown. We started partnering with fitness expos in 2021 maybe. And that actually works really well because we're in a big convention center, so we can kind of spread out as much as we need to, as much as space as the expo holds. And we're introducing the sport to other people, so people walking by are like, why are these people screaming and cheering so loud? And so it's great to get in front of other eyeballs that way, but it also makes for really good live stream and great media to be in a wide open space and things like that. So we do a mix of both now. We've kind of graduated from the CrossFit gym because one, it's really hard to find gyms that are that big and have a rig down the middle for us. And so we've graduated from that. Now we're more in expos, and we love going back to our equipment partner, Valor Fitness. They've got a warehouse in Tampa, Florida, kind of like feels like we're coming home to our roots, but they also have a big enough warehouse where it fits everybody, it fits the grid. They've got the equipment there. It's really, really nice. And we do an event there every year to kind of bring the community together, have a really fun, great day of grid and kind of have it be our home base.
And let's talk a little bit about, for anybody that's listening that's obviously not from the CrossFit world, let's talk a bit about the grid. And as I realize we both have been talking about, we don't have context for anybody that's not sure what that is. So a lot of people know when they envision CrossFit, they have the general things that they envision, the tires, the this, all that. Let's go through and kind of tell people what the grid is and what that concept is from an organization standpoint.
Sure. So grid is compared to CrossFit a lot because we have barbells and a rig. So people kind of see us on social media for a couple seconds and they're like, oh, that's a version of CrossFit. It's interesting because it could not be more different than CrossFit once you get into it a little bit. So CrossFit's purpose, it's started as a training methodology that turned into a sport, but first and foremost, it wants to prove fitness. It wants to show how fit you are or help get you fitter. We are much more like football than we are CrossFit. We just happen to use the same kinds of equipment. So we've got full teams. Those teams have positions on them, or within that team. There's a lot of strategy involved. There's a lot of coaching involved, and a better coached team can actually beat a more fit team. So we're not trying to prove fitness at all. We just want to see who crosses the finish line first. So that's the main difference, is that it's a team sport. It's a regular season playoff and championship structure. And whoever has the most points at the end of the match is the winner, right? So it's very different than CrossFit in that way. The ways that we're different than traditional sports are, most of all, it's co-ed. So the team is men and women equally on the team. They could go head to head against each other, or they could be working together on the team. And so it's got everything that makes team sports awesome to begin with is amplified that much more because it's men and women working together on this exciting, high pressure environment kind of team sport structure. And so it's been really cool to see how those dynamics in, co-ed team sport, we've got female coaches coaching male players and also coaching female players, and how different it is to kind of communicate with the two different genders and then bring them all together. It's been really, really interesting and awesome to see that difference of, like I said, everything that makes team sports awesome and great for society is amplified and duplicated because everybody has somebody that they can relate to on every single one of these teams.
That's really cool. And so when you're going through the grid and you're kind of progressing through, you're doing various you use the term exercises during the actual elements. Okay, so those elements are in there during the competition.
Yeah. So we call them matches. It's two teams going head to head in a match, just like a normal football or soccer game. Within each match, there's 11 races, and each race is worth 2 points to the winner, 1 point if you finish within the time cap, or 0 points if you don't finish within the time cap. So at the end of the 11 races, whoever has the most points wins that match. And so each race has a name and a rule structure that uses the team in different ways. So there's different amounts of players on the field. Some are all women, some are all men, but most of the time it's a mix of both. And it's different, uses of teamwork as well. So the first race is called Partner Forward. There's one male and one female that are on the grid at a certain time, but only one person is working to get the reps in. The elements get harder as you get down the grid, and they also get fewer reps. So you might use your strength specialists towards the end in quadrant 3 and 4, where you might be using more of your body weight specialists in the first couple of quadrants. There's a lot of strategy
and spacing,
but only you can substitute at any time. So sometimes, most of the time, teams substitute after like the first and second quadrant, and that's something that you would get used to seeing. But depending on the race and depending on your players, it might make sense to substitute after the first quadrant. And then everybody would be like, oh wait, they're substituting early. Are they going to substitute again later? Or are they going to have the same players go, 3 full quadrants?
Yeah.
And would that be faster than if they had substituted after the second quadrant? There's all kinds of different ways to look at it. And so once you understand the sport and how cool it is, once you start diving in, it's like,
it reminds
so
me.
fun.
Yeah, it reminds me. I like the personality differences too, because a lot like CrossFit is a one-on-one type thing. You might have a coach with you, but for the most part, you're by yourself and you're focused on your own thing. And a lot of introverted personalities kind of get drawn into that world. It's interesting that you took that twist where you're like, okay, you can still have that world, but also you can also join the team sport world while also still hitting the elements from the other thing. And I think that's a really beautiful collaboration. For me personally, I connect with it growing up as a wrestler. Being on that one-on-one, but then having the team aspect for dual meets, and then obviously being in football and rugby, but having the team aspect. So it's nice to see that exercise element and that fitness element has both collaborative competition and one-on-one focus. So
yeah, it's great because it's we get a comment. One of my favorite comments that we get consistently is, "Man, this inspires me to get off the couch," or "How this looks so much fun. I used to play team sports. I don't have anything anymore. How can I get involved?"
Yep.
And if somebody asks that question, we always say, go to a CrossFit gym because you're going to learn CrossFit as your fitness method.
Right, it's not either or. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it really is like a cohesive relationship that we have with CrossFit. We are CrossFitters.
Right.
We love CrossFit. It's just not the same thing. We're not trying to do the same thing at all.
You're the old bourbon is whiskey, but whiskey's not bourbon.
Exactly.
So tell me a little bit about have you had any, a lot of times in the CrossFit world, and I'm going to generalize that, you hear a lot of what you just said. It's a lot of times it's not people that have never stopped working out. A lot of times in my experience meeting people in CrossFit, it's people that have refound that joy for fitness or anything like that, or never had it and just never realized that this world existed. So tell me, for you, in your experience, any memorable or intense moments that have from what your work has done has really kind of affected different people that are participating in your work.
I mean, we've had people that have met and married through Grid, which is cool. We've had people that have switched teams because they met somebody and want to go play on the same team as them.
Okay. And you don't mean in Grid.
What's that?
And you don't mean in Grid.
Mean?
You mean in the game?
In the game, yeah.
They switch teams in the game.
Well, so they get signed to one team or they've met.
Oh, they just turn on their teammates and they're like, peace.
There's been some drama in the last year or two.
No dividing houses there, yeah, wow.
Players kind of switching around and teams. I mean, it's any team sport, It is what it is, and it's what strategy is going to work best. We've also had, boyfriends and girlfriends going head to head against each other, which also is a storyline you just don't get in, other kinds of sports. That's cool. Yeah, it's really fun.
The ones that said, no, we're going against each other.
Exactly. Even in the same race, their teams picked them to go head to head against each other in the same race. And so, those kinds of storylines just don't happen in other sports, which is something that makes our sport so unique. It's so fun to watch because it's got all the team sport and excitement of regular team sports, and it's also got all that reality, real life reflected kind of, it's not just.
That's why I love these types of sports, these types of things, because of that. It's because it's not a fully professional in the sense that that's all they do full time.
Right.
So they are real human beings in that sense. You know what I mean? And it's they have real things in their head that are distracting them from the present. But, it's just and that's the type of stuff that I think about when I'm watching that. And
I like to say it's CrossFit meets American Ninja Warrior meets football.
That's where my head went when you painted that picture of the husband and wife going at it. I was like, yeah, that's exactly where I was. Yeah. In the great gladiator days of our youth. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
For your role specifically, with the strategic partnerships and stuff like that, obviously a sport like this and a competition like this, and for some people looking at it as an entertainment aspect, there's sponsors and things like that are involved. How can people in the community and the communities in which you participate kind of help support through sponsorships, or whether it's just for showing up and different aspects of that?
Yeah, so what I like to say is when we're looking for strategic partnerships, what we really want to do is amplify products and services that make life better. And that's for our players, for our athletes, for our staff, and for our audience. So our audience and our players right now are mostly CrossFitters or in the fitness industry in some way. We do see a world where it's everybody, any sports fan is going to find grit and fall in love with it. But for right now, our low-hanging fruit, because of the barbell in the ring thing, is CrossFit and fitness. And so partnerships that are looking for that audience, it just makes sense to get your product and service in the hands of our players and then amplify that with our own accounts. It just makes a lot of sense for everybody. So when we find those kinds of products and services that are looking for that audience and a lot of better for you CPG brands, that is exactly what they need and what they're looking for. And so that's been a really good category for us. Supplements, shoes, athletic gear, stuff like that is like the stuff that makes perfect sense. But also, honestly, we just brought on a new partner called Facet, which is a personal finance kind of partnership. And it happened to be the co-founder is a CrossFitter, and so he understands the fitness audience really well, and he understands the parallels between your physical fitness and your financial wellness. But so it's a partnership, it's a brand that's really different and outside of what we would normally try and partner with, but it also still makes sense. Also makes life better, and that's like one of the biggest things is I want to help everybody that's involved with this league have a better future and a better life by the partnerships that we have.
And what are some of the facets of with that partnership? You guys do like brand placements within the events, and you have social media, different aspects that they can participate, collaborate with you.
Yeah, we're super flexible, and we want to come at it from a strategic viewpoint. So most of the time we kind of think about it in 3 buckets where we first develop influence with our players. So if our players genuinely like the product, that's going to make it the easiest way to get it in front of more people and understand what the value proposition is from our partners. And so that's kind of step number 1 is get it in the hands of our players who really genuinely loves it, and how can they talk about it in a way that helps educate others on the product and service. So we're developing influence with the people who have influence within their communities. We create content, so we're almost like a influencer and content agency as well because of our marketing background. We can kind of if you're gonna go get content from your influencers or from other people, then you can just do it kind of all in the same package and have it be more of a 360 type of understanding of your brand and getting it out there. So we do the influencers, we do the content. We have our own accounts, obviously, where it's more like a traditional sports marketing brand. So there's the association. We can educate through our commercials on our live stream or lots of brand impressions in different ways and things like that. And then we have our live events. So we also can sample to the the expos that we're at, where Mr. Olympia was just in Vegas with 40,000 spectators. We can sample your product for you, or we can provide you a booth that's right next to the grid so that you can come and sample your product and things like that. And so we're really trying to think about it where it's all of the things that you need to get awareness, to get sampling and seeding the product and getting influence about the product and education about the product. We're using all of our assets to do that whole kind of thing. At the same time, there might be brands out there that just need a piece of that, and so we can do a partnership that's just based on just awareness, or I only want to work with the influencers. So we're super flexible based on what the goals are of the partner that we're working with, and we're always I always try to emphasize that my brother and I are real people who sincerely care about the people that we're working with, because we understand that those businesses need this to work. And so we're always trying to make sure we're tracking KPIs throughout the deal. We're communicating before you have to ask about what we did for you. This event just happened. We sampled, Olipop is our jersey partner this year. And so every event, we sampled 1,974 cans for you at this last event, because I don't want them to ever wonder, where is this product going? What's happening over there?
That's an excellent point, from a sponsor standpoint on the paying end as well as the other end. That's the communication is key there,
I happen to know, because my husband works in the CPG industry, I happen to know kind of insider information from CPG a lot. And when he was describing the deals on sampling at, grocery stores, it's like, I don't know.
Nope. It's
I
just,
have no idea what they've done.
it is just flushing money down the drain.
Exactly. It could be, or it might not be. You don't really know. How would you know?
You have those forms and they don't fill out. You have no idea how many people walk through. You have no, I've been on the management end of it, trying to fill out the forms for the brands.
I can only imagine how frustrating it is.
Putting ranges and everything.
Right. And sometimes my husband will be like, I need to go check and see if they even showed up, because who would know?
And multiple times I would go and nobody would be there yet.
And then they charge you $40,000 for it.
Exactly.
It's amazing. It really is.
Exactly. So in closing out, I want to talk a little bit about, over the course of your career, you guys that have gone through. I could spend hours talking, for example.
I know, like, I'm done.
I know. I'm like, I just looked at the clock and I knew we both have a place to get to. So I'm gonna be conscious of that. So in the next 10 minutes, we'll wrap up here. But for one thing is, we have a show every week called FreeMind Fridays, and I do it with Clifford Starks, who's a former UFC and Bellator fighter, and he's actually just recently inducted in the USA MMA Hall of Fame.
Oh, cool.
So we do turning pressure into fuel is the theme of it. I want to bring you on to our that show as well. So if you're open to that.
Sure, my brother too.
Perfect. That's excellent. We can do all four of us on it. So I'll send a message out to you and you can elaborate with that. We shoot usually on Wednesdays at 3:00, and then I produce them and then put them out on Fridays.
Great.
So yeah, I'll send you that lineup, and love you and your brother. The next one, get on it.
We got a lot of pressure.
Because it's a lot of fun, and you guys, I want to talk a little bit about, in closing with that, the pressure, and I want to talk about life lessons and lessons you guys have learned. And one thing is, like, this is not a show that is about, the beautification of entrepreneurship. I grew up reading Inc. magazine and all that stuff and all the glossy pages, and then got my head smashed in a million different times. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
So like, let's talk about, without scaring people away, but also being realistic. Like, what are some life lessons? And I know finance was something you brought up, and I think that's something that people do not. We glorify the bootstrap philosophy and mentality, but we don't realize sometimes that if you're undercapitalized in a project, the stress, not just financially but mentally, and sometimes the project might never see any light of day because of that. So talk a little bit about any life lessons or things that you and your brother, maybe it's coping mechanisms of relationship, like negotiations or anything like that.
Oh man, so the thing that I come back to every single time it gets hard, which is often, is that my brother and I are so well positioned for each other. Our strengths are so opposite that it's caused a lot of difficulty, a lot of communication, issues between us. But the fact that he and I are always willing to, our mom drilled it into our heads when we first started working together. Family is first. This cannot affect how well our family functions. And so it was always that we have to work through our differences in order to make sure our family is number one. And working together has really brought us a lot closer because we've had to confront, I think this way, well, I think this way. And so, neither of us is wrong, it's just different. We come at things different ways, and that's the reason why we've been successful. Neither one of us would have made this whole thing happen without the other one, 100%, we know that. And so for a long time, I told myself, I'm not as good as Mather because I think so differently than him. And he's always right. He's the one he's my older brother. So it's a little bit like those dynamics are tricky. But I think life lesson number one is always be able to look at hard things or disagreements, especially between your partners, from the other person's perspective and see how could they be right? How could I be wrong? Or how could I change my opinion? Or how can we meet in the middle? Because it is so much like everybody thinks about things differently. And everybody's opinion is valid. We need to listen to each other and not just dig our heels in and be like, this is what I think, this is the right way to go. So that's especially with family, we've got to see things from the other person's perspective, and communication is so important.
Yeah.
I'd say the first couple of years for me and Mather, we're just working on our communication.
And that's everything. And that's whether that's with your business partner, whether it's your family or not, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your kids. You know what I mean? You have to have the why.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm learning that. I'm approaching 40 now, and I can confidently say I'm probably 2 years into really getting that into a forefront of my life where like it's like, all right, stop reacting so much and start understanding why they're trying to say this. They're not wasting their energy.
Right.
Unless they're a person like that, then you just wipe them off.
You don't marry them.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to thank you so much. I can confidently say this is the first of many conversations we're going to be having, and I really appreciate taking the time. I really appreciate you setting the space. The space is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'll be letting Peter know that this is a great space.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. I'm not involved in this space in any way.
That's,
I love it.
There you go. Well, yeah. So thank you again so much, and I appreciate your time, and that's we're good on that part. And then so what we.
You know my story, right?